I'm not even sure what quorum is. Marielle?
No, we're still missing a few committee members.
Okay.
I'm going to email the other committee members and just see if they're going to make it this evening. I think we just need one more person.
So Edna Santiago just texted me and says she's got COVID and feels lousy, but if we need a quorum, she'll sign in.
Oh, no.
So I asked her please to do that.
Okay. Hopefully she feels better. Hopefully others join as well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Wow, I'm noticing an unfortunate trend. A lot of people are getting COVID. A lot of people that I know in the past few weeks are under the weather because of it. I wish her
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I actually just I'm slowly recovering from it. It's highly transmissible. It's yeah, just as you mentioned, I just about everyone I know has caught it or has some, a family member that's caught it. It's stay safe, everyone. That's the important part.
Wow. Hi, Etta. Happy New Year. Wishing you well.
Thank you. Same to everyone.
Hey, Etta, thank you.
Hi, Bruce.
You sound lousy. Go back to bed.
Okay, I'll just listen in, but I'm not going to be talking too much.
Okay.
Thanks, Etta. So I believe with that we do have quorum. Just double checking the numbers. I know the committee has changed up a bit. Chanel, can you just help us double check that we have quorum?
Yes, one moment.
Thank you so much.
Yes, you have quorum.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you. Great. So let's go ahead. Thanks, Chanel. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Thank you so much for joining the January meeting of the Housing and Human Services Committee. Daryl is unfortunately our chair, unable to make it this evening. So this meeting will be co-chaired by both myself and Bruce, as I'm currently listening to another meeting at the same time. So thank you in advance for your patience. We can go ahead and get started with just brief introductions. If everyone can just go around and just state their name, their role, and then we can dive right into the agenda. I'll go ahead and start. I'm Marielle Ali, and I am the assistant chair of the committee. Thanks.
Go ahead.
My name is Aisha Ogilvy. I'm a member of the committee. I've been on the community board for 8 years.
With Donald Trump and who don't question their own election. When you hear people from the Republican Party talk like that about an election they know was legit.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. I'm Marshall Vanderpool. I'm the first vice president of Dykeman Resident Association, and I am a public member.
Okay, Bruce Robertson, co-chairing tonight. Been on the committee for 2 years and live in downtown Washington Heights. I'm looking forward to this meeting. So we have...
Oh, I think I need, okay. So I'm Etta. This is Etta Santiago. I'm sorry, I'm going to be off camera tonight.
Yeah.
I've been on the committee. I'm a committee member for my second year now.
Thanks so much. I believe that's everyone from the committee. I know that we also have Adam, who's joining us for one of the agenda items as well. I believe I did see Phil as well joining us this evening for our discussion later on in the agenda regarding the Fort Washington Armory. Great. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We'll go ahead and kind of dive right into the agenda this evening. The first is to discuss the 37 Hillside project regarding the variance hours, the request for Saturday working hours, and then we'll also discuss the other project as well. Just to refresh everyone's memories, the committee did pass for it or did vote for it to move on to the general body meeting. At that meeting, it was decided to be tabled because there were some concerns regarding just having a little bit more information in the resolutions. And I know that the resolutions, some members did not receive it in time. So what we would like to do now is one, to look at the resolutions, first to add the friendly amendments that were suggested at the general meeting in December, as well as ask any additional questions. And I do see again that Adam is here to answer those questions, so that we can then move it forward to the general meeting. We'll vote and then, of course, move it forward to the general meeting later this month. Bruce, are you possibly able to, or maybe I'll need to forward it to Chanel since
No, I actually have the two resolutions. If Chanel gives me posting privileges, I can put it up.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
So, but before we adopt the agenda, I think it needs to be amended to include the second property, which was not listed in the emails that went out.
Yes, let's do that. Let me just pull it up. I think that was an oversight from the office, because that is something that needs to be addressed as well. So thank you so much, Aisha, for bringing that up. And so the second property is 4790 Broadway. So the item is to, again, look at both the resolutions that we had put forward for the general meeting in December for 37 Hillside, as well as the location at 4790. Both of the resolutions requesting hours on Saturdays for additional construction hours. Can I get a motion?
A motion.
Thanks, Aisha. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
I'll second that.
Thanks. And I guess maybe even before we dive too much into the agenda, is anyone able to volunteer to take minutes for tonight's meeting? Michelle, would you be able to possibly take minutes for tonight's meeting?
Yes, I can take the minutes for the meeting. Will there be question? Will there be a recording available afterwards, if in case I miss parts of the meeting?
Yes, there will. Great question. I would not recommend. Yeah, no. Chanel will more than happily share the recording with you once the recording is ready, and you can use that as a reference point. Thank you so much for your help. We really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Great. Okay, so let's start with 37 Hillside.
Chanel, can you post that resolution? I'm having a hard time.
I may need to forward it to Chanel. Let me forward the email to Chanel. Just give me one
I'm doing
moment.
screen share, but okay. Who can share only hosts? What do I want to do?
Okay, Chanel, I've just sent it to you. So once it hits your inbox, you'll see that there's the two resolutions are attached. The first one we're going to address is the 37 Hillside one, in case you're able to access it quicker than Bruce. Thanks again.
Okay, I'm waiting on the email.
I don't know how this works. Sorry, guys. Shift to select.
Okay, maybe what we can do while we wait for the resolution to be shared on the screen. Again, I do see that Adam has joined us. Adam, would you maybe just take a minute or two just to remind everyone and refresh those who are tuning in terms of our guests and for the recording, a little bit about the property and the request? Thanks.
Sure. Can you all hear me? Can somebody on camera give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I'm Adam Zidell. I work for the developer of 37 Hillside Avenue. It's a 100% affordable housing project. It's 164 units for low-income seniors. In addition to the 100% affordable housing, we're building a new home for the Rocky Mount Baptist Church, which has been in the community for over 50 years. They're going to get a new church built to their specifications that's double the size of what they had previously. It's a project sponsored through HPD. It's passive house, which is sort of the latest and greatest in terms of energy efficiency and environmentally friendly design. It's an all-electric building, meaning it doesn't use any carbon. And it's going to be a very beautiful, affordable housing building. We convinced the city to give us a budget to allow for a copper facade to the building, which is very, very rare in all buildings, but especially, I can't think of another example of an affordable building with a copper facade. And it's because of the unique context along Hillside Avenue, where you have this sort of swooping curved street, and you're building more or less into the side of a hill. So we got a fancy design architect to build a very beautiful affordable housing building. And it's a very popular project. We had a groundbreaking where the council member was there, the deputy mayor was there, the congressman, the US congressman was there, the state senator was there. And, you know, we're very excited to be in construction. We got delayed significantly because we couldn't get Con Edison to come out to the site and turn off the gas for, I want to say, 4 or 5 months at the outset of the project. And so, you know, we're seeking permission to work on Saturdays so that we can catch up in our schedule and deliver this project on time and on budget, so that the city of New York continues to believe that attractive, energy efficient, 100% affordable housing projects are worth investing in. Oh, I should mention one other thing. We have monthly meetings with our neighbors to address any concerns that they have. And as a result of that, you know, good faith effort at communication, we haven't had one sort of neighbor complaint, and we're, I want to say, 1.5 years into the job. So, you know, we've really made efforts to be good neighbors and community members. And, you know, we're hoping that we can get this permission for Saturday working time so that we can, you know, finish this project up.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam. Much appreciated for that background. And I do see that Chanel has now shared her screen. Can everyone, I can see it. I'm assuming others can see it as well.
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. So what I can do is I'll go ahead and read it. And then I know, again, at the general meeting, there were some friendly amendments that were suggested that I think we can add in here to strengthen the resolution, as well as address any concerns that members may have before we vote on it. So again, this is for the project at 37 Hillside, whereas the construction project at 37 Hillside is behind in its efforts to construct housing in the church facility. Whereas extending a variance to include work on Saturdays would help finish the project 1 to 2 months sooner and alleviating noise for nearby residents sooner. Whereas the construction company has demonstrated a considerable effort to work with surrounding residents and be available for any complaints or concerns. Whereas the construction company has indicated they will not utilize every Saturday for the duration of the project, taking into consideration holiday weekends. Whereas Saturday hours will start later than weekday hours. Therefore, be it resolved, Manhattan Community Board 12 grants the extension of construction to include Saturdays. This was drafted by Daryl, and I recall one of the friendly amendments was to include the current working hours and the hours that would be for the Saturday, if this is granted. And just a reminder that the vote, if I recall correctly, I don't have the minutes in front of me, but I believe it was 7 yes, 0 no's, and 1 abstention for both this project and the other, excuse me, for this resolution and the other resolution. I think I see a hand up. You see
Yeah.
two. Okay, I wasn't sure because I'm on my phone, so apologies. I can't really see it. So Aisha, you can go ahead, and then Etta. Thanks.
So, as I stated at the general meeting, I was the abstaining member, not because I don't think this is a good project for the community. I think it's amazing. I was involved in an effort to bring a passive house project to not specifically to our community, but to a Manhattan community. So I do find great value in some of what I see included in this project. My issue was the community and the impact on the community with the timing, the amount of Saturdays, et cetera. And really my request was to hear from those community members. Now, I understand Adam is here and he's saying, hey, we've talked to them. But as a board member, and from my experience, best practices would say, that's hearsay. Any developer can come and say anything that they've done anything, but what do we really have as evidence of that, right? And what happened at the general meeting was when I stated that, both the chair of land use and the assistant chair of land use both said, that's exactly what we said when they came to us just a month before. Which is that they wanted to hear from the community. They wanted to hear that there was outreach to the community, that there were connections that were made, that they had an understanding of what the position of the community was. I talked to the assistant chair of land use after that and got more in-depth information. She found it surprising that the things that were listed as efforts to the community were even a thing, because why wouldn't you have said that the month before? And it seemed kind of quick for something like that to evolve in such a short period. So they went to land use and then they came to us and pitched us on all the efforts that were made for the community. I since have done a post in 2 of the Inwood community groups, right? Which it's not really an effective way of trying to glean what the people on Hillside think, but maybe there's some people that live there that may be in the group, were my thoughts. One person answered. That one person said they'd never heard of such an outreach. They live right near the project. It's been loud, and they've been getting what seems to be impact in their apartment to their water, to other things. I could pull it up on Facebook and read exactly what she said, but that was her response. So I just want, my intention is to appropriately advocate for the people who we represent in this district. Obviously, this building is to support the people in this district. So it's not about being antagonistic or against the developer, but it's about making sure we represent the people in the community and what their interests are and the impact that can come to them as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha, for your comments. I'll turn it over to Etta, and then maybe Adam, if you could respond, or if you have any kind of comments afterwards on Aisha's point.
Okay, thank you. Just looking at this resolution, I think when we had voted last month, I don't recall seeing the actual wording of the resolution. And to Aisha's point, there are some concerns that people were expressing during the December general meeting, but we also need to counterbalance that with the benefits to the community. I mean, this committee itself, I believe, selected affordable housing for senior citizens as one of its top priorities. In the in the budget priorities. So for instance, that first whereas clause, I would propose that we make it very clear as to what this project is. I mean, looking at this, I don't really understand what it is. To construct housing in a church facility, that could be luxury housing for all we know, right? So I think it would be beneficial to put here in efforts to construct a 100% affordable senior housing and church facility. I think it benefits everybody on the community board to understand exactly what we're talking about, what the pros are, what the cons are, to kind of understand what's going on with this resolution, because it's very vague. And as far as the extending the variance to include work on Saturdays, it's my understanding that they could already work on Saturdays, or they could get that without community board permission. The only thing they're requesting is an extension of the hours on Saturdays, so it actually makes sense. I understood that if they went, and I don't recall exactly if it's Department of Buildings or what agency, that they could potentially start working at 10 in the morning. That was my recollection. But this would allow them to start anywhere between 8 and 9 a.m. and that those 2 extra hours make a big difference, because workers don't want to be working late at night on Saturdays, and you want to get the work done sooner rather than later. So I just wanted to be clear, if my understanding is correct, that it may be in the second whereas, extending a variance to include additional work, additional hours on Saturday. Because I don't think it's fair also for people to think that if we reject this resolution, that oh, they can't work on Saturdays. They're going to work on Saturdays regardless, whether we approve it or not. The question is how many hours they're going to work on Saturdays.
Thanks, Ed. I think those are two really good points that you've raised, and also points that I believe were raised at the meeting in December. Because it is quite vague, and I think again, kind of adding more specificity to it and details would certainly strengthen. So thanks for your comments.
Oh, Marielle, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No.
One last comment. The third whereas, because it's coming back to me now during the meeting.
Please.
I think there was some debate about the use of the phrase demonstrated a considerable effort to work with surrounding residents. And I think we really got bogged down as to what is considerable effort and what those effort entails. And I think that's when we go back and forth as to whether they engage the community sufficiently, who decides whether those efforts are considerable or not. And so I would propose even taking, I would say, instead of saying the construction company has demonstrated, we could say the construction company has indicated or has stated that they have made efforts, because we really don't know what efforts they've made. We're taking, as Aisha said, their statements to that. So I just think it's clearer, and it would avoid having some debate as to the language, because we really can't say whether their efforts are considerable or not.
I would agree with that, with everything that she stated.
Great, thank you. I'm taking notes on that, so we can definitely, I think those are all friendly amendments that I think, again, as Etta said, and you as well, Aisha, would strengthen this and kind of really reflect the conversation that we had at the December meeting. I think I saw, if it's okay, Adam, I do see 2 other committee members' hands that are raised, both Richard and Marshall. If it's all right with you, I'll have them both chime in and then you can respond.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thanks. Richard, Marshall, Bruce.
I think I'm mostly picking up from comments that have just been made. I would like to see the first whereas be more specific on affordable housing and anything that makes it clear the nature of this project and why we would do this. I don't want this to be an open-ended precedent that any developer can come and say, well, you did this. So I'd like to see this resolution, which I'm generally supportive of, be as project specific as possible. I think we might also consider simply eliminating the second whereas, because it's a pretty general statement that I can easily see being misused under other circumstances And I don't think it helps the argument that much here. And those would be two suggestions.
Thanks, Richard. Point well taken on, again, kind of specifying a bit more this specific project. And I think that also includes naming the developer and so on and so forth. On your point regarding the second whereas, I mean, I do think, I think you're right. We want to be careful to, in terms of setting a potential precedent. But I wonder if maybe in another whereas we can kind of make that specification clear, and then we'll have Adam, of course, at the end kind of clarify whether it's, and I think Eda's recalling correctly, that it's for them to start 2 hours earlier, 1 to 2 hours earlier on Saturday, rather than like the 10 a.m. that they would be given if they were granted this. I believe it's already been granted. And so we also do need to kind of clarify that. But I also think it's important to say this is why they're asking for it and this is the reasoning for it. Marshall?
Thank you. I just wanted to say maybe in the third whereas, I wanted to follow up with Eda, and maybe it could be bolstered with maybe a promise of future cooperation with the neighbors. That was my point. And also, as I'm thinking about last meeting, I think we did have one community member come in, and I think there was some disagreement or objection on how things were being done, but that's a recollection I have from the last meeting. And I'll land my plane here.
So I just wanted to speak to our practices.
Hold on, just if you hold that point for a second, because Bruce is next, and then after Bruce, you
Oh,
can come
sure.
in.
I didn't see his hand.
Not a problem. Go ahead, Bruce.
So paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can't we just say Saturday hours will start at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or whenever they want to start, and that's it? Case closed for that. Let's be specific. The whole thing about this is it's a little bit too vague. And we want to tighten it up, that's all.
Thanks, Bruce. I've jotted that down. Yeah, I mean, again, adding to that specificity will certainly strengthen this. And I would see, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Aisha, go ahead. I know you had one comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say sometimes less is more. This may be one of the shortest resolutions I've ever seen come out of housing. But I think including the selling points, some of which overlap with our own goals over the years, as we, some of we've already stated, but spelling those out, but also the inclusion for the noise limiting that was promised in the project, that there's an expectation that even though this is going to go on for X amount of period, that the expectation that it's going to be, there were specifics that were stated, and I think that those should be in the resolution. I also think that, and this, it's focused on this resolution, but in general, that we should have best practices in the same vein as we see coming out of the licensing committee for how we operate when it comes to something like this, right? So having an expectation that we would see and know and have an intimate understanding of exactly what the community outreach was, right? And not just from hearing it from the developer, but from knowing when a meeting was held, who was present, what were some of the testimonies, that kind of, and even being invited to that meeting. That has happened in the past for other projects where community board members have been invited to come out and be a part of that process, right? And then we would know it intimately, exactly what happened and exactly what was said, because we would bear witness to that versus just hearing someone say, hey, they love it, there's no issues here, right? And I think that makes us better leaders and better representatives of the community when we do that. And it also prevents backlash. We have had several projects come through this community board where after the fact, the community rises up and says, how did this happen? this is how it can happen sometimes when we just allow a developer to come to the table and say whatever without doing our due diligence. So, and additionally, another best practice in the general meeting, when friendly amendments are proposed, requests to have anything taken out or added, then when it comes back to committee, then we should know exactly what those things were so that they are, because those are, it's procedure when that's happening. It's like the mechanism of the board and the force of the board putting things on the table that so that when it funnels back, we're making sure that we're including that. I think one of the things that was stated in the general meeting was related to the third whereas and whether that should be included or not. I don't hold me to that. That's my recollection. I don't know if anyone else remembers. But yeah.
Thanks, Aisha. All of really good points, particularly the one about, making sure there's sufficient notice. My understanding is that both of these were put on the agenda quite late, like right before the meeting. So it was like 1 or 2 days before. And so in this particular instance, I don't think we had enough sufficient time, but I do agree with you that moving forward, we should set a better precedent in regards to if developers do come forward, that there's enough notice for the community if community members want to come and attend and, voice their opinion either in support or, offer some constructive criticism, then they're welcome to do so. Regarding your point about the inclusion on some of the expectations that Adam and the team talked about in terms of noise limiting, I think that's a really good thing. And I would see that as a friendly amendment, and we can add that in here. In regards to some of the points that were raised at the general meeting from other community board members for the friendly amendments, my understanding is that they actually never sent them to Daryl. So, I'm going to go back and listen to the recording as well. And I've jotted down what everyone has discussed here to make sure that we have kind of captured the concerns that everyone raised. So thanks for that. Adam, I'll turn it over to you because there were a couple of questions that were asked from the different committee members, and just want to make sure that you have an opportunity to chime in.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks to everybody. I can see that you all take this very seriously and you're very diligent in your analysis of these things. And there was a lot of questions. So if I don't answer anybody's question, feel free to raise it again. I don't know if I remember all of them. So all I would say is, when we were trying to get this project financed and approved by the city, we had to really fight to make it as good as it is, to have it be 100% affordable for seniors at the lowest tiers of affordability, with all of the bells and whistles, the improved design that you would not see in any other affordable project, the passive house engineering, which is exceedingly expensive, the all electric, which is costing us, I want to say, another $1.3 million, which we had to really push the city and say to them, you can have affordable housing and you can have all of these other great things in a project as well. And a lot of folks at the city are very eager to say, well, you can't pull all those things off. And if we can't deliver this project on time and on budget, those folks' argument will be strengthened. And so what we're asking for is your help to be able to deliver this great project on time. And it's going to help the city see that this sort of a project is possible and allow folks like us to do projects like these again. So I just want to put this in a bigger context. I want to also correct one factual item. Marshall, there was not, in fact, and anybody can check the record that they want anybody who showed up at the last meeting to complain about the project. I take as a great source of pride that we have not received a neighbor complaint to this point. And, there's an objective record. There's 311 calls. There's DOB complaints. We have not received the 311. Of course, I'm sure you see a lot of these applications. It's easy to confuse it, but I just want to correct the record because, we take great efforts to make sure that we're in constant communication with the neighbors. I give everybody my cell phone. I respond to everybody. I try and respond within 2 hours to any call, text, email that I get. So I take great pride in the fact that we haven't had any formal complaints, because if anybody complains about anything, I try and resolve it as quickly as possible. And, with respect to Aisha's point, I think that that's a very fair critique of the procedure when it comes to, giving neighbors and the folks that you represent an opportunity to participate in this process. But from my point of view, it's sort of a challenge when everybody seems to be generally satisfied with the job that you're doing. And as a result, they don't show up at the community board meeting, or they don't show up at the subcommittee meeting. It's difficult to motivate people who are generally satisfied with the construction project. When folks are upset, that's when they show up and they're voicing their opinions. If there's a specific sort of evidentiary hurdle you want us to overcome, I'm happy to do it. But again, the larger context is every month that goes by that we don't get this permission, it sets us back in our goal of trying to deliver this project in a way that the city can realize that these sorts of projects are possible and should be financed in the future. So I hope that you see way clear to approving this resolution without delay. And if there's any other questions, one other substantive question. Yeah, we would like the 8 a.m. time. Eda is right. We could start Saturdays at 10 a.m. technically under DOB rules, but then you can't get any workers to show up. Workers won't show up to work, just a few hours. They want a day that has those extra 2 hours in it. So in order to work Saturdays, we need to have the start time be 8 a.m., which is later than our normal start time during the week. And if I missed anybody's question, I apologize. I'm happy to answer it.
Thanks so much, Adam. Just noting the time, I see that it's already 7:46. I do see a couple of committee member hands up. Just wanting to check if those are old hands, please put them down. But if they're kind of a final response to Adam, I would suggest that we move to voting as soon as possible. Just wanting to check if there's any old hands. I see Michelle, you have your hand up. You haven't had a chance to speak. If you want to go ahead, Michelle.
Sure. Thanks, Marielle. My point is that I think it would be really nice to see some of this engagement with the community, Adam, that you've been talking about. So it would be nice to share some of the information from your engagement with the neighbors, or if there's the ability for one of us to maybe sit in on your meetings with the neighbors, I think that would be helpful. One of the proposals in the general meeting, I think from Angel, was that maybe we post something on the like near the site to give folks more information about where they can give their feedback. So I think I like everybody's sort of feedback that we should get more feedback from the community, and like, let's be proactive about it.
I'm happy to do, I have 3 ideas off the top of my head. First is I'm happy to send my contact information, including my cell phone and email address, to the contact person I've been dealing with from CB12, and she can circulate that to everybody. And you can all circulate it to anybody in the community, whether or not they're on the community board. If anybody has an issue with the project, they can contact me through that contact information. Second, I'm happy to post something near the site, so anybody just walking by can see it and contact me. And thirdly, we do hold this monthly meeting, and if you give me a contact person, I'm happy to invite them to the meeting so that they can participate on an ongoing basis in this monthly meeting, which has been very productive. I have to say, those meetings have sort of whittled down to about 5 minutes per meeting, because generally there's no issues, but it's a helpful check-in to have. So I'm happy to do all of that stuff on a going forward basis. But again, I hope that you can see your way clear to approving this resolution tonight, because it is very meaningful to our effort to deliver this project on time.
Thanks. I can follow up as soon as I get your info.
Okay. Do you want me to send you my contact information? Maybe I can post it in the Q&A section here. Let's see. Trying to figure out the best way to do it.
Or if maybe, Adam, have you been liaising with Chanel?
Correct. She has my contact info. and
Okay,
she
so yeah.
can, she can circulate it.
Perfect, exactly. I think that's, we can do it that way, and then Michelle will kindly follow up. Thank you, Michelle, for that.
And I would be very happy to have you all attend the monthly meeting that we have. So we can coordinate that through Chanel, hopefully.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I see 3 other hands, Etta, Marshall, and Aisha. Please, no more than a minute so that we can vote on this. Thanks.
I'll be very brief because it actually had to do exactly what Michelle just raised. My suggestion is that we incorporate that similar to the licensing committee resolutions where they actually include what the commitment is from the owner of the property. I would like a commitment, like Adam just said, about those 3 steps he's willing to take, that it should be reflected in these resolutions, not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of the general body. When they're reviewing this and voting on it, they understand what steps have been taken. Thanks.
Thanks, Etta. Great suggestion. Marshall?
I just wanted to say that my recollection is that there was a public person from the public who said they lived on the block and did have some issues with the project. It didn't necessarily raise itself to a formal level. And we post these meetings on YouTube. So I'm going to go to the videotape and refresh my recollection of this. And thank you.
Maybe you're right. I'm sorry if I got it wrong, Marshall. Maybe you're right.
Thank you both. Yeah, I do recall there being a resident, and I know that he did ask questions about the project. And he was kind of wanting to find out more. I don't recall the resident's name, but it is in the December minutes. So yeah, there was a resident that did speak about the project. Okay, and then lastly, Aisha.
So very quick. So I did take screenshots of the chat. I don't think I was in Vegas at the last meeting, so I wasn't looking at the chat, but in the general meeting, there was someone commenting in the chat saying they think that there should be broader outreach to the community to know and understand what's going on with this, and that this is a potential, and see what they think, right? I could try to pull it up now, but if I find it, I'll send it out to the committee. But in the general meeting, much to my chagrin, one of the things that Angel said was he doesn't think that it's our responsibility to engage the community, that we shouldn't have to drag everyone to come to a meeting, right? And I think that goes very much against the spirit of a lot of what I've learned here over 8 years. As the chair of IT, I've personally filled rooms of meetings for this board to where there's people out the door. And I think that's the kind of work that we should be doing. I think it is our responsibility. And I don't think that it's hard. You just have to want to do it in the first place, right? But aside from that, the original point that I was making was not even so much of whether people are coming to the community board, but that we get to go to the meeting that Adam is referring to, where he's already gathered those exact people from that community to hear from them, which is also a part of our practice. There's numerous projects that have taken place where that is exactly what we do. And the developer often will bring back pictures of those meetings, examples of notations that were taken from the community members and things like that, which helps to sell the idea, right? And make sure that there is, so I mean, I just think that there's best practices of creating community involvement and making sure that everyone is heard and that everybody's on the same page. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. I mean, I think that's a point well taken, that not just yourself, but also Michelle and Etta have touched on. And maybe that's some work that, maybe it's a matter of drafting it up and kind of looking at what that looks like for this committee. As you mentioned, again, kind of making sure that the notices are going out with time. So members, do know what's happening, ensuring that we're also including, as Etta mentioned, the commitments of the developers in the resolution. So one, there's some accountability, and that, residents can always refer to that if they have any questions and want to see what we discussed. So yeah, if that's work, I think that's really important, and something that we can take forward. Thank you for that. I don't see any other hands, so I would suggest we go ahead and go for a vote based on the friendly amendments that we discussed this evening, as well as a review that I will do of the December meeting to ensure that we haven't missed anything. Can I get a motion for us to vote on this?
Motion to vote.
Can I get a second?
I second that. This is Etta.
Thanks. Okay, I'll just call everyone's name. Again, I'm on my phone, so thanks for your patience.
Do you want me to
Bruce,
do it, Marielle?
Yes, can you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start with Etta,
Yes.
Michelle Lee,
Yes.
Aisha Ogilvy,
Abstain?
Marshall Vanderpool,
Yes.
Bruce Robertson, yes. Marielle Ali,
Yes.
and who else is there? Oh, I'm sorry, Richard Allman.
Yes.
And that is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a yes, one abstention, 0 no's.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Bruce. Again, I'll go ahead and incorporate all of the comments from this evening, as well as just kind of taking another look at the December meeting to make sure we haven't missed anything and update the resolution. Great, so let's quickly move on to the next one. If you could, Chanel, if you can put that on your screen. Again, just noting the hour, it's 7:56 p.m. So if we could just quickly go through the next one as well. I think very similar to the other resolution, this is the 4790. There were some concerns again with, making it more specific, including the hours. I'll give everyone just a quick moment to read it through, and then we can briefly discuss and vote on it. Thanks. I think I see Etta. Etta, go ahead. You have your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, some of my feedback is similar to the previous resolution. Just looking at this, I don't even know what this project is about. So I believe this is a residential, right? But it's not affordable. Or it's a mixed use. I think it's a mixed use building, if I recall. I don't really remember, and I don't have that information here in this resolution.
It's the Eliza. It's the Eliza.
Eliza. It's
Yeah.
the Eliza. Okay, but then something along those lines. Like this project, the Eliza project, something, because honestly, I don't know. This project, is located on a major commercial corridor, because here, the project is unique in the fact that the entity most closely impacted by construction noise is a nearby school rather than residential buildings. Okay, I mean, that could be a second whereas. It just seems kind of like out of place there. Yeah, I didn't think that there was enough specificity as to what's going on here. The same comment I have on the third whereas, with the demonstrated a considerable effort, it was the same language that was used. I would always hesitate to state something as a fact when we don't actually know that. So I would always say, I would propose a construction company has stated that they have made efforts to work, and then keep the rest of the sentence if you want to keep that. And yeah, I think that's right now what I have.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
second that.
Oh,
Aisha, go ahead.
so again, I wasn't at my desk last time we had the meeting, or I would have done this. It is peculiar to me that if you Google 4790 Broadway, you can very clearly see residential buildings across the street and diagonally from this project. So how is it stated this is mostly and not at all residential when that's not even true? That's number one, right? And this is the kind of problem that I have when we just go by whatever they come and they say to us, when just a small due diligence on our part, we could see that what the actual truth is. And so it's not my intention to be antagonistic, but it's my intention to be intentional, right? And fair and honest about what is happening in our committee. So I don't think that any of this resolution should state that residential is unaffected, because I'm looking at residential buildings on Google right now, right? And also it just looked like the exact same resolution that we just came from. I think there could have been a little bit more distinction to see what the differences are, pretty much in the vein of everything that Etta has just stated. Like, I don't, if we took the title off of either one, I wouldn't know what the difference was. So, and again, the statement that, oh, they don't really say that they did outreach or anything like that. But yeah, like, where's the community in this? It's my same issue again. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. Yeah, I mean, I would accept that as a, I would accept that as a friendly amendment, being familiar with the area. There are some buildings right across the street. Again, this was drafted kind of in a, not, sorry, just one second. Alex, I want to call, please wait. This was drafted, you know, with not enough time. And so I think that's unfortunately reflected in it. But again, this is why we're discussing it, to provide more specificity to it. I've noted down what you've both added, just wanting to see if there's anyone else that has additional comments on this.
I did want to add something else. I don't see anybody else. So if that's okay, I'll go ahead. Otherwise, I'll mute myself. There's someone else?
Yeah, Richard.
Okay.
Go, Richard.
Oh, okay. I'm a little uncomfortable here. And some of it is the concern about precedent. I'd like to see that this one of these two actually works out, because every developer is in a position to say it would be better if we could finish sooner. I think with Riseboro, we've shown we're willing to take a chance on that, to learn from it. But this might be a little quick to do two together.
So why don't we go back to the developer and ask for some more information? And then redo both of these resolutions and present them to the committee as new drafts, and fine tune it then, rather than spending a lot of time now.
Bruce, I'm not asking that the previous resolution be withdrawn or.
No, neither am I. I'm just saying, why don't we redraft both resolutions with all these considerations and resend them to the committee to work on, rather than try to hammer all the details out at this point. We've gone over a lot of ground and covered a lot of issues that have come up.
That's a possible approach, but what my comments are going after is having a couple-month gap between the two resolutions, one way or another, so that we can see how it works in a particular situation. This is a substantial exception we're making, and it may prove to be a perfectly reasonable thing to do, but I'd like to have that lived experience from it.
I just wanted to add, I think the building is 4791. Not only is it a building across the street, it's a massive building across the street. So for me, it's just confusing, having heard there's nothing but schools here, and that's all we needed to focus on. To see such a big building, and I don't like to misspeak, right? Just to be argumentative, right? So I withheld, but my brother's business is just up the block from there, and I kind of felt like I had a handle on what the neighborhood is like there, and I was right. There is a massive building across the street. So I don't know how everybody else feels. For me, that's confusing.
Okay, can I say a few things here? Has everyone had a chance to speak?
Yes, go ahead, Etta.
Okay,
then I'll-
so I'm sorry. Yes, I can't.
Yeah,
see
go
all
ahead,
that.
and then
Okay. I, respectfully don't agree with Richard's approach about waiting it out and seeing how it works on Hillside. These are two separate projects. And I don't think, even if Hillside everything works perfectly, I don't think that would necessarily inform me one way or another about the Broadway. And similarly, if the Hillside one is a complete disaster, I mean, maybe that will inform me a little bit, but it's a different project, different location. And yes, Aisha, I hear you as to like, well, maybe the way this is drafted makes it sound like there's no residential buildings, which is just not possible in Inwood. There are residential buildings almost everywhere up here, but there is a difference being across Broadway versus being on Hillside, which is only residential and it's not a two-way street of cars. Broadway, you have two-way streets, what do you have? 3 or 4 lanes. It is a major commercial corridor. So there is already greater noise. And the reason the school, if, going back in my memory here, the reason the school was such a big emphasis is because it's right next door. And they were positioning it as it's actually less destructive for the school to be working on Saturdays as opposed to working on, the weekdays. So if they could finish the project sooner by being able to work on Saturdays, that means it's going to be less disruption for the students who are there Monday through Friday. I could appreciate we want to be concerned about all residents, but that was the reason I thought we were highlighting the school, was because this was special consideration, especially because the kids are going to be disrupted every day during this construction. So there's a priority in trying to wrap this construction up earlier rather than later. But I agree that the wording of it is misleading, and we can really tighten that up to be clear that there are residential buildings.
Thanks, Etta. I don't think I saw any other hands up. No. And I see that Adam has left us. Yes, I would agree with you. I would say we take out the, kind of the note that says, yes, we do know that, again, that it's nearby a school, but just kind of take that part out in the first whereas, where, impacted by nearby school rather than residential buildings, because they will be impacted. And I'll need to kind of go back into the minutes from December as well, because I know that we also asked a lot of questions. We did ask the Riseboro team a lot of questions about noise and things of that nature that can be captured in this resolution to provide greater specificity. I would recommend that we do not hold this back any further. We've already spent, again, an hour on both these resolutions. Unless there are any other comments, I would like to put a motion for us to vote on it with the recommendations that you've all added, and also kind of looking back at the December tape to make sure that all those concerns are included in here, including, for instance, their commitment to noise mitigation and so on and so forth. Just want to see if there's anyone else with a hand up. I don't see anyone else. Okay, so with that,
Mariel,
go ahead.
Sorry, there's a comment in the chat. I just wasn't sure if you had seen it.
Oh, let me see.
Okay.
I see something in the Q&A. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. Thanks. Looking at it now. Can we see the names of other community community board committee members. So thank you for attending. The person is anonymous. I'll go ahead and type there is no chat because this is a webinar because of the way it's projected and because of the recording, that's my understanding. It's a Zoom feature. But if you would like to say something or ask a question, you're more than welcome to in the new business, and we'll provide you an opportunity to do so. Thank you so much for joining this evening. Okay, thanks, Aisha. I did not see that. Great. Anything else on
Actually,
this particular?
the functionality. I
Sorry?
think the functionality exists. It's a choice that's being made when the meeting is created to not include the chat. It can be there.
Yeah, that's outside of my control. I mean, again, for the individual that's joining us and typing in the chat, we'll certainly give you an opportunity to speak during the new business section. So again, thank you so much for joining, and we'll make sure you have an opportunity to ask your question. Great.
I'll call for a vote.
Yes, can we put a motion on the floor to do that, please?
Yeah, I move we vote.
Second. Bruce, would you mind doing the roll call?
Of course.
Thanks.
Marielle,
Yes.
Aisha,
Abstain.
Etta,
Yes.
Marshall,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Did I say Richard?
You just did? No.
Bruce, yes. So the yeas have it. One abstain, one no. Speak up, anybody, if I missed them or got something incorrect. If not, voting is closed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce. Could we then move on to the next point on the agenda? I believe that's, Alex, please stop doing that. I believe that's the discussion of the New York State Homeowners Assistance Fund. I don't have the agenda in front of me. I just missed it. One moment. Let me see if I can
Oh
pull it up.
That's it. And you and I would like to defer to Richard Allman because he's brought this up and seems to know more than anybody about it. Can you speak to this, Richard?
Actually, no, but I think the reason my name is on it, I saw an email from, I don't even remember where on this the other day, forwarded to Daryl as an FYI. I haven't had a chance to research it. I'm aware that we have a significant number of co-ops and moderate income home ownership situations in the neighborhood where this may make sense. But I don't have any research behind it other than having noticed it the other day.
Okay. So can we move to table it for this month and take it up in February, since we're kind of caught short on this topic? And
Can we have somebody from the fund itself come to present to us?
absolutely, we can invite somebody. Good idea. So we'll move to do that.
Quick question, Bruce. I'm sorry. Isn't there a deadline? Is this the one that homeowners are applying for assistance? And
I'm not sure.
I thought there was a deadline, the New York State Homeowner Assistance Fund, which opened this week, January 3rd, and ends February 4th. I only mentioned that because for our next meeting, the deadline would have already passed. So even if we're not discussing it, for anybody listening, for them to be aware that there's a deadline. If that's the one we're talking about, the Homeowner Assistance Fund, where they could qualify for up to $50,000 in aid.
Thank you, Etta. We'll get on it and send out a notice. We'll have Ebenezer send out a notice to everybody. We'll take that on. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so
Thank you.
Marielle?
Yes, thank you for that. I'm looking at the website now. And I think you're exactly right. It does say the application period will be open for 30 days. So yeah, we'll need to kind of get more information about it and see if we could just send it out in the community board listserv and, Facebook and so on and so forth. So
What
thanks
type
for,
of what type of housing are they subsidizing? What does
so
it
I
say?
don't, the details, I'm just looking at here. It was kind of part of the American Rescue Plan. It's the funds to help homeowners at risk of default, foreclosure, and displacement as a result of the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's kind
if somebody's in with their mortgage and so forth, this will help them out. Yeah, let's get this out. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you. Great. So the next point on the agenda is it's listed as alternatives to shelters, and I'll kind of briefly speak to this. As most of you know, there are a couple of very active Facebook groups for our, Washington Heights and Inwood. And in one of the Facebook groups, I believe it's the Uptown 2.0 group, there over the past kind of month and a half, 2 months, there is an individual who has reached out to community members asking for support in a variety of different ways. My understanding is that this person is experiencing homelessness, and has been asking for resources and things of that nature. For those who are familiar with the situation, you will know that there has been some unfortunate backlash to the person kind of reaching out and asking for assistance. And the person did state that, they did not want to go to the shelter because, they've experienced things in the past and it hasn't been, pleasant or humane in some instances, which is really unfortunate to hear. I just wanted to check before we kind of continue the conversation. This can be quite brief. And then is anyone familiar with what I'm referring to? I don't want to say the individual's name, but just want to check if others online are familiar with what I may be referring to. Etta?
Yes, I'm very familiar. I follow that entire conversation.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you probably know what I'm referring to, the situation online. And so the reason why this is on the agenda, this was Daryl suggested it, which I think is a great idea. It kind of spurred a thought, recognizing that, what are some of the alternatives to shelters in our city for those experiencing homelessness? And I think I had a brief chat with him yesterday, and we also talked a little bit about, what other resources exist in our community for those experiencing hard times. So, not just, housing related, but more so on the human services side, which I know, Richard, is something that you have brought up several times regarding, making sure that we're also looking at, our human services side of the committee. And so a suggestion that we kind of thought of and would love to hear your thoughts would be for us as a committee to kind of pull together the different resources that exist regarding, food. So, pantries and kind of contact information, places where individuals can get, clothing, for instance, subsidies, things like, for instance, reduced or the free Metro cards, the different types of resources that we can share with our community members and compile it into one document that can be shared through the community board website, through the email listserv, through our, various online platforms. I'll pause there and see if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Richard.
Yeah, Marielle, I mean, I agree. We could compile a document. I think the challenge with this document would be keeping it updated, because a lot of these things sometimes change. Like, for instance, for food, right? You'll have the Uptown fridge, or you have food pantries. Sometimes they change the dates or how someone could apply to get in line. So I think it's a great idea to compile the resources. I mean, as Aisha has mentioned before, we're here for the community. So any way that we could help bridge the gap and make it less bureaucratic for them to get the help that they need. And you're right, we'll put it on the website, we'll circulate email, we'll post it on social media. Obviously, that's still not always going to reach the people who need it the most, because they're not all on the internet. But I think that's a great first step that we should take. as far as alternatives to shelter, New York doesn't do a very good job of, I mean, most places don't, quite frankly, do a very good job of housing people. And it is very challenging to even qualify for programs unless you've been through a DHS or through one of the other shelter system for a certain period of time, or you're in the process of being evicted. So it is very challenging. I read, posts like the ones you were referencing, and it's very concerning whether it's true or not. I don't necessarily care because I know that that is the truth for many people in our city. And unfortunately, it just seems like it is one hurdle after another for them to get the help they need.
Yeah, no, agreed, Etta. And really good points about, kind of ensuring that we're keeping things up to date because these things do change. What I thought was, we could also kind of loop in, for instance, the electeds. They often have a lot of this information already on hand. And maybe it's a practice of, every 6 months, twice a year, just kind of refreshing the document. But also making sure that that document is shared with community members, and encouraging them to, have those flyers printed out. So as you mentioned, those individuals that do not have access to the internet, because we also need to think about that. Maybe it's, that at these different community centers, the documents printed out, and also ensuring that it's in Spanish as well, considering the community that we serve. Aisha and Richard.
So I think I vaguely remember when Richard Lewis was chair, this being started. There may be something in the office in relation to it, like a resource manual. I think we had an event at that time. We had vendors come out and things like that. I vaguely remember something like that, but I kind of feel like this is reinventing the wheel that already exists. And also what Etta was saying, that then, keeping it a living document, right, that's updated and is always a reflection of what is happening now, becomes difficult, right? And there's technologies to prevent that from being a problem. I think starting with what already exists and maybe raising the visibility and the awareness of what those platforms are, would be maybe more effective. And then if we see gaps and holes and things that are not available that we know of, then that's, another conversation. That being said, I came in on the tail end of that conversation. I think I just caught like a glimpse of statements that were being made, and it was like very deep into the conversation once I stepped in. So I was confused about exactly what was happening. So I don't really know all the details with that individual, but I did see it. But I know in the conversation about the armory, some of the research that I personally did going to the facility, at one point going into the shelter section of the armory to go have a discussion with one of the directors there. Myself and Deborah Cardano had a very chilling experience. What we witnessed happened to one of the residents there. I don't know if everybody knows, but that is SPMI shelter, severe and persistent mental illness. So these are people with probably comorbid overlapping issues, extreme circumstances. And the way that this gentleman was treated, he walked in with a bag of his belongings, and the officer that was there took his belongings and threw them all over the lobby. Like everything that was in the person's bag just spread out over and the person was very traumatized. And then he was like yelling at him. And I spoke to one of the residential aides on that day, and they were like, that's light. That this kind of thing happens all the time here. And that it, sometimes will even result in violence. And this is right on our doorstep. So at that time, the intention was to dig deeper into how at least that specific facility is being run, because I agree with that person that some of these places are not a source of comfort for many of the people. I do a lot of advocacy with people on the ground who are dealing with homelessness in that moment. and getting them in and out and advocating for the connected services. So I hear some of, what that impact is. We also had a meeting here that Ariel led with various members of different offices that deal with the homelessness situation. And I brought to their attention some of what I experienced in advocating for people. And they admitted that they are all operating in their separate silos, and people fall through the cracks of those gaps that exist within the agencies for addressing the whole person and what their issues could be. So I feel like there's a lot of work that we need to do to speak to that we know that these things are going on, and even to make whatever suggestions we could possibly make to better that. I don't think that they're difficult problems. I think we just need to speak to the what we see that we know exists. So.
Thank you, Aisha, for your comments. I didn't realize that the community board already has a resource manual, so I would agree with you 100%. Let's definitely start with what already exists and taking a look at that and updating.
It would be old. If it exists, it's old, but I just vaguely remember us pulling together something at a point.
Great. Thank you, Aisha. Richard?
Unmute, Richard. Unmute.
Done. I think this discussion has evolved to the point that we have 3 or 4 different topics on the table right now. And while I want to speak to a couple of them, I also want to do that sorting so that they get the attention they deserve. I think the discussion of homelessness, of shelters, and specific situations within the CB12 area is a discussion unto itself, and it deserves some good attention. Initially, I wanted to respond to the thoughts about doing a resource guide. Since then, it's come up that we have some of that. I suspect it's considerably out of date, just because services and nonprofits tend to evolve much quicker than we wish they did sometimes. So I think there are a couple things. It's a big project. I do think that it would be worth one or more of us reviewing what we have already to see how, a general take how up to date it is. I think Aisha's comments about what additional platforms are out there, what additional sources of information that we might do a better job of getting out there is also something worth doing at the beginning of this project. And I think the one conversation that I think would be especially worth doing would be a conversation with the borough president's office, who would probably have an interest in bringing together a list of borough-wide services, much of which I think has been done by the outgoing borough president. But if the borough president were to take on that piece of it, then that would be useful to all 12 community boards in Manhattan. And the tasks that would fall to us would be to look at the things that are specific to our district. 3 topics. Let me catch one more. I think the things that I've tried to comment on before about human services are that we don't know, I don't think we know very much about human services in the district, about what their needs are, and what actions might be relevant for this committee to take, resolutions or other actions might be relevant. When we've taken positions on issues, it's usually been with input from a very small number of human service providers. I'd like to see us expand on that so that we have a better sense of needs and make sure that the knowledge we have comes from multiple places, multiple track records, multiple experiences. I think some of that is stuff that we might do jointly with the Health and Environment Committee. All of those are ideas that I'm just trying to do some sorting and put some ideas out there. It couldn't have been a discussion, Andrew.
No, Marielle actually is on another call, so she may be called away.
Okay.
So yes, anybody want to second that or add to that? I'm going to jump in here, and I think that's a great idea. We have Mark Levine, who's our new Manhattan Borough President, and who knows us, so that's a step ahead of some of the other downtown folks, and we have connections with them that we can ask them about this and what's in the database from Gail Brewer that might help us get a jump start on this resource guide.
Yeah, actually, before I was removed as chair, DHS did come and have a meeting to talk about the services that exist under their umbrella, and they did not complete that because they went in depth about how exactly some of the things work, because we had questions about just how shelters in general function. At that time, we were discussing one of the new shelters that was supposed to come to the district. But we discussed some of the concerns we had at the Fort Washington Armory. And then we wanted to learn, like, what is the outreach process? Because it also intersected with, I forget the name of the little triangle. Is it Juan Pablo Duarte?
Yeah, Pablo Duarte, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that we had people who were experiencing homelessness gathering there on a regular
Right.
basis, and what the impact of that was. And so we were wondering, is this like overflow from the Fort Washington Armory? So they came to speak on all those things, but they promised to come back to give us more information about changes that were coming, but also, more information about how those human services under their umbrella operate and what's available. So I think
So in my mind, this sort of segues into the next topic, which is old business about the Armory. If anybody has any objections. Oh, Marielle's back. You want to jump
Yes.
in?
I am. Thank you for your patience.
So
I wasn't
Aisha
called
was
away.
just talking about the Armory and some of their homeless program, which kind of spills out into the Duarte Triangle at 169th and Broadway, which I know personally can be problematic in times. They have security guys there, and
well, actually, what was said at that meeting was that it was not their thought that many of the people that we were seeing on those corners and in that triangle were from the Fort Washington Armory, specifically because they have a team of people that go out into the neighborhood, and when they see residents that they recognize, they tend to pull them out. But what they also do is they try to do outreach with the population that they see there to try to connect them with services, because they understand that it creates the narrative that the Fort Washington Armory shelter is being problematic in the district. Now, I can't say how true that is, but that's what we were told. So, and one of the things that they said is that when you have a shelter in a community, it can tend to become a hub for other people experiencing homelessness, even if they are not receiving services at that site. So, yeah, I think Michelle.
as you say, it's complicated, and you know better than most all the nuances of how it interacts with the dynamics of the neighborhood. So, Marielle, what I said was that this is a good segue into the old business topic of our Armory hearing and how we're going to structure that going
I think
forward.
Michelle had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, apologies for that. I was taking notes and also wanting to make a quick point on the issue that Marielle raised. I think like this is part of our role as a community board, to my understanding, is to connect the residents with like the services that are available. So whether or not we're, amplifying like elected officials' work and just sharing that more widely. Like, I think it's part of what we should be doing is trying to reach the community with what services are available. And I don't know, like I myself don't even know necessarily where to go to find that information. So I think it's very valuable work, whether we're sharing outdated information, like that would be bad, but at least we have like a process and we're trying to share out something. I think it could be really positive. And I'm just noticing that like folks are interested, but I'm not sure what kind of commitments we'll be able to make towards this. Or who is interested in doing some of this or what venues. So I think there's a lot of vagueness right now, but overall, I think the idea is good.
Well, I'm definitely interested in it. As some of you may know, I actually got a use case accepted by Microsoft to be able to implement a platform for our entire district and to be able to push information out to stakeholders as well as pull in information for stakeholders. I am a trained developer at this point, and I want to build it myself at this point, because due to the conflicts that exist within our board, that opportunity kind of fizzled out, which is unfortunate. I'm in school again right now. So that's my hesitation to say, yeah, I'll do it, is that because I have other things on my plate right now. But I feel like a guide is good, but I feel like we're kind of moving like dinosaurs in regards to how the data can be effectively distributed, updated, etc., when we're doing it on hard copy paper. So.
Edda?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Edda. Apologies.
Just a suggest, I'm thinking here, if we create a Google document that we share with our committee members, could this be a place maybe where, you know, we kind of like dump information that we know? Like, for instance, I know there's like an information session on Zoom 2 days from now about the homeowner fund. So I put it there under housing. And we all have access to that. So while we're trying to create this masterpiece of a database or some document that, as Aisha mentioned, might, you know, take a little time in gathering and then disseminating that information. If we have one place where at least us as committee members have access to, we all have our networks, we all have our different platforms where we share information, and we can start amplify that right away. We don't have to wait to go through all the channels of making sure like, okay, this is good with the committee. Now we're going to check with all the electeds. Now we're going to check with community board, like the staff. And it seems like that process could take a little while, whereas people might need assistance right away. They don't have time to wait.
Hearing that, Edda, kind of jogged my thoughts of, would the committee be, because I think that's a great idea. And I think being able to very readily push out anything new that we learn would be good. So what if we had a Facebook group that's from our committee where, and not the only place, like let's have the document that Maria is talking about, and let's work on having that updated on a regular basis. But whenever any of us learns of any opportunity, any resource, any, like for instance, we had the ERAP come out with the rent assistance program, right? And there were so many people who I knew that communicated to me, listen, I don't know how I'm paying my rent. What do I do? I knew about ERAP because I was going to the borough president's office meetings and was able to push that out to them. But how would they have learned about it otherwise, right? And so when we learn about those things, maybe we could just push it into just the same way those other Facebook groups operate, that it be solely about resources.
So let me make sure I understand, Aisha, because I know that Community Board 12 has its own Facebook page or group or something. Are you proposing a separate Facebook group, kind of like those Uptown, you know, Inwood, Washington Heights social groups, and anybody can join, but the only purpose is to talk about resources? Or are you suggesting that our committee itself has its own Facebook page separate from Community Board 12?
So there's a little bit of a conflict there in my mind. Part of which is there was an original Facebook group. I created that Facebook page, right? And it was created because of me, honestly. The chair, George Fernandez at the time, I would just post resources all the time on my personal Facebook. He saw that I was doing that and he said, you know what? I think I want to elevate what you're doing for our board and our community. He created the ITT task force, right? For whatever reason, with this new administration that has come into play, I became a conflict of interest for the space that I created, nurtured, added people from the community to over time. There's thousands of people on this Facebook page. It is now defunct because of whatever's going on in this administration. The new one has 200 people on it. Completely pointless, in my opinion. That being said, we're kind of talking in a vacuum there because of that. I don't have control over that, but that is what's happening in our board, right? That being said, I think, and I'm not against it being done on our community board page, but that needs to be sorted out because there's some things going on there. That being said, the group could actually maybe not be only from us, maybe other community members have information and resources too that they can provide to their fellow community members as well, just the same way those other groups operate. I don't know how people feel about that. Then that would require moderators so that we don't have anything that, we can prevent posts from automatically posting so that it's not as much work to detract something that is inappropriate, but that we just approve things as we see that they are appropriate. But those are possibilities. And that actually can expand beyond the work that we ourselves, who are often busy doing other things as well, aside from the work that we do as community board members, and get a wider audience that can contribute. So.
Thanks so much, Aish, and thanks, Etta. And apologies, I did have to step away for a while. Just recognizing the time, it sounds to me as if I would agree with Etta's suggestion and your suggestion, Aish, in regards to creating, when I said document, it doesn't have to be a Word document. I think a Google document is probably best. As you mentioned, it's much easier for people to kind of share and add. I wonder though, in terms of creating that group, considering that we're all quite stretched already, I would instead maybe recommend that when we do share resources, that us as committee members use the existing platforms that already exist, not just from the community board, but also like the Uptown group. I know most of us are involved and we can just say, there's this new resource, or there's this, did you hear about this program or something like that, that we as committee members say, hey, let's get this information out there on the platforms that we're already on. So that way we don't have the responsibility of having to, as you mentioned, kind of moderate discussions and, approve posts and so on and so forth. So what I'll say in terms of next steps for the particular, hi, Daryl.
Hi, so sorry.
Happy
I just heard the tail end of this conversation. I apologize. I'm in an airport right now, but just real quick, I did want to add, I have seen on other community boards, they do have a resource page. So maybe we could also look at that and just replicate that, which I believe for most cases lives on the website of the community board. But there's just specific pages dedicated to resources like what we're discussing this evening.
That's a great point, Daryl. I think, yeah, that's definitely something that we can look into. And I wonder if it's just a matter of linking the whatever Google Doc that we do decide to use and kind of having it on there so anyone can click and we'll have that updated information as we add that. So what I'll say is, because it is 8:43 and we still have one or two more items on the agenda, in terms of next steps, what I can do is I'll kind of see if I can dig up the existing community manual.
There's a resource directory.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take a look at that, and we can circulate that amongst ourselves and we can start taking a look. If someone on the committee wants to take the initiative to maybe create that platform on a Google Sheets document of some sort, at least the outline, maybe it's creating the different tabs, housing, food, so on and so forth, so that we can kind of get this started, because it sounds like we all are interested in this and certainly have a lot to share. Does anyone want to kind of take on creating the Google document or Google Sheet, whichever?
I could create the Google sheet. It was my suggestion, so. Sorry.
Thank you, Etta. Wonderful. And again, it's just a skeleton, just kind of say, okay, this is how we can organize it, whether it's, different tabs or columns or however you think might be the best way to digest that information. And as we start kind of going through that old resource document, we can, make sure that it's updated and start compiling or adding that information into that document. So thank you so much for taking that on. Daryl, I don't know if you just kind of want to listen. I probably still want to listen in since you're still at the airport. Is that, I just want to make sure that I'm correct on that, right?
And sausage.
I'm sure you are. Sorry, I was getting in a car.
Okay, no worries. Bruce and I will continue that. So thanks so much, guys. Again, so it is 8:44. I would like us to end this meeting at a reasonable hour, but we do, of course, want to discuss the issue of the Fort Washington Armory resolution. And so what I would say is we started talking about it in the December meeting. If you recall, Daryl suggested for everyone to kind of take some time and think about some of the questions that we would like to raise at the forum. I know that Aisha and many others have worked diligently and compiled a number of questions that have been circulated in the past in terms of questions that we would like to ask. What I will suggest, recognizing that it's kind of late in the night and I have a son that needs to go to sleep soon. I would say we recommend having the next 15 to 20 minutes at most to discuss the Fort Washington Armory. In particular, we're only going to discuss the modalities of what that forum will look like. So the resolution calls for us to have a forum. Let's talk about what that will look like. So thinking about who needs to be invited, making sure that we're having all the respected representatives. What does the platform look like? Ensuring that there's a hybrid model, for instance. Hopefully at that point we can have things in person. The questions that we're wanting to ask, also thinking about the ideal timing. So I'll kind of leave it at that. I do know that Gary wanted to speak. I'm assuming it's related to this. So Chanel, would you mind promoting Gary, please, so that Gary can make his point? I don't know if I'm on my phone, so I don't know if I can do that from my phone.
So I just want to elevate something that Gary is saying in the Q&A. And this is something that I've witnessed over time often, and even been attacked because I raised this issue with the office and the executive board at the time, which is that when some organizations within our community attempt to get involved, whether it's they want to promote their event, they want to send out a flyer, they want to, whatever it is, the office is very selective about who gets that opportunity, right? So like the Columbia Universities and the Presbyterian hospitals of our community, it's an instant thing. It happens like within minutes, but yet organizations that are doing good work in our community, months, they will attempt to go through the hoops that they say are required in order to have that same thing available to them. And it never makes it to our page, to the agendas, to the meetings, all those things. And I think that's just lack of equity. So there are things that could be in the resource guide that probably aren't because of that practice.
Can we let Gary speak?
Yeah.
Marielle?
Yes. Is Gary promote? Thank you, Aisha, for that point. Gary, are you now promoted? I think I saw.
Yes, hi. If you could hear me.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead. We'll give you 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Wow, that's hard. So hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I am kind of confused about in the old days where it was actually a dialogue and a conversation. So right now I'm wasting time, I guess, but for my 2 minutes. So I think I have a right to ask what something that happened for GDS, and Bruce, I heard you speak and kindly ask last meeting about the importance of knowing about the services in our community. And we have been asked to be put in the resource manual, but we're not in the resource manual. All the things I'm saying are well documented, and I'm really just grateful that you guys are listening, and I'm just would like to know the answers to some questions that happened in this committee. Growth and Development Services was wrongfully evicted. We all know the facts, and it was just now our 3-year anniversary where we were locked out of our own space. So what is the hard part of people speaking up on this? Because it's so obvious, and the one person that has, and I'm sure that you guys care about mental health services. I mean, you all have good hearts and you're volunteering your time, but I don't understand. We were supposed to be offered a request for quotient for our own space. What happened to GDS's free mental health services? It is so obvious. It's such a confusing, long story. So for Angel or anyone to ask why we keep talking about this, all you have to do is, as a committee or as true community board members, don't you want to know why on October 20th, 2014, 29 people voted to look into the ownership of the building? We never wanted any of this to happen, but don't you wonder why that Faye Florimon told Aisha this is never going to the floor? And now you wonder why, Angel, there's a 5-page resolution. When you were at Growth and Development Services with Marisol Alcantara, you were there and you said that you tried to help. One meeting you said, I know Angel's not here, but I would be saying the exact same thing if he's not. This has been such a long battle. It has been over 10 years. Everyone always told me, just stop trying in Community Board 12. You guys have to care about free mental health services. One of our kids died by suicide. He lived 2 blocks away. He had nowhere to go. I'm a psychologist. I believe in social responsibility. If you're neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. How can we just allow free mental health services and GDS to just be evicted? I am asking you, please, to advocate. You all know, we were told by Matt Borden on March 7th, 2019. I mean, I have all this information in my head. He said, Dr. Altheim, I'm sorry, but you will be offered an RFQ for your own space. Faye Florimon won't let me speak at Youth and Ed. Steve Simon has a conflict of interest. He voted no for Resolution G. I asked to speak. We're looking to continue our mental health services. I could go to Harlem. I could go anywhere. I founded Growth and Development Services.
Gary,
Yep, that's the end.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm sure your
Darryl,
time's
I
up,
know you
but-
get upset when I get people to come and speak, because I
No,
know
no,
you
not at
mentioned
all.
that.
I
No,
mean,
you
to an-
said that. It's everything
Yeah,
that you
to an
said
extent.
is recorded. Can I finish? my
But I just
sentence,
want to
please?
point out the point of this meeting is to talk about the process of what the forum is going to be.
I am
And you raised
talking
some
about
good
the process.
questions.
How come
You-
everyone is
You raised some
asking?
good questions that we can address, but we do have to move on. You had a
Okay,
time
so I'm
limit.
asking the committee to help. I am asking
And I
you as
think
the
we hear
chair.
you.
Okay,
I
so
think we
I'm
hear you.
asking you, who is the contact
And it'll
at
be
DHS?
reflected in the notes.
And how can I find out about the request for quotient that I have a videotape of, that Matt Borden promised Growth and Development Services? Don't you guys want to know what happened to
I
our
know you
space?
and Aisha had specific questions that you wrote out. If this
No,
is
I'm just
different than
asking
those
for,
questions,
can I
please
ask for your
write it
help?
out and we'll add it to the minutes.
No, we've written a 5-page resolution out with Mr. Zablocki.
Okay.
I'm asking help,
But also,
please.
Marielle, I just want to jump in and say, in terms of the process, what we're actually supposed to be talking about, I
The
did want
process
to
was
mention, I
supposed to
think
be
we
Ellie
should
Bueno
find,
moving the resolution public
I
hearing
think we
forward.
should
It has
find
never taken this long.
Gary?
who the
Mr.
new leadership
May I
is
chime
in the,
in, please? Thank you, Gary, for your points, and thank you, Daryl, as well.
yeah, we just need to
just-
find out who the new leadership is in the mayoral administration that may be different than who we've dealt with in the past to invite them to the forum. That's all.
Correct. And if I can just add to Daryl's point, so as you mentioned, Gary, the next kind of step in this is for us to put together that public session. And really, right, this evening's discussion is about putting that exactly together and determining a timeline. So it would be helpful for us this evening would be, again, if you have additional questions in addition to those that I know Aisha has put several questions forward. Other committee members may have questions, but also timing. Recognizing that there's kind of a new administration, that they would probably need some time to get settled in, but that doesn't stop us from agreeing what that public session will look like. And so that's what we want to discuss this evening. I don't
In a normal, I just want to understand the
I'm
protocol.
sorry, wait, I have my hand raised. Sorry. So
one
I want to
second.
clear something up.
Hold on. One person at a time. Aisha, if you can go ahead, and then Aisha, after you speak, go ahead, Gary. Thanks.
So I want to clear something up because narratives are very important. And this board, unfortunately, over the years, has been extremely rooted in gossip, unnecessary gossip, because there's a lot of data that exists around all these things, not to mention that our meetings are recorded and minutes are taken, but nonetheless, people running around telling stories that are not the stories that exist. So I want to make sure we quickly clear something up here. These questions were not put together by me and Gary. That's not what happened. These questions evolved over years from committees, specifically from members of this very committee asking questions of our elected officials, of the agency that oversees the building, right, of the Armory Foundation, that is the organization that's in the building. That is the collection of questions that exist that did make it into a resolution, stem from that. It is the work of this board. So I want to make
Thank
sure.
you for clarifying that,
thank you,
Aisha. You know, I
Aisha.
did want to positively attribute that to you, but if it is, it's good to know the backstory too.
I understand, but what has happened over time is a lot of and many people don't know the whole story, right? I was a rookie on this board to begin with. The beginning of this process was me being accused by a chair of having private meetings with Gary. I didn't even know the man. I didn't even know him. I know about these secret meetings. And to me, that's as a woman, that's egregious. That's egregious, right? And that's only scratching the surface of the level of which this has gone to in this board, right? But what's important is that we serve our community, right? And I'm glad at least we have a resolution finally. It took 8 years to get that resolution and a lot of fighting, right? But that's why I'm trying to be intentional about making sure that what we say is accurate, because it creates major problems. That being said, my suggestions would be, I feel like there are other things that we've learned since creating the list of 23 questions in committee that are important. I feel like there are things that people have wanted to stay away from because they're protecting people. And I think that that's inappropriate, right? I think that the truth is the truth. For instance, it's not been wanting to be stated that a man was sleeping on a queen size bed in this facility that belongs to the city of New York, where the city pays all the utilities and for all the maintenance of said building, for instance, right? That's important because to me, that's a theft to the community. I counted 36,000 hours minimum theft to the community of a space that could be delivering all sorts of outcomes for our community, right? So in the forum, the way I envisioned it, and the reason why I requested the language that says that the community should have the opportunity for a public hearing is I feel like there are best practices for how to run such a facility as this building that we find in our district, right? There's research that says what is the best way to yield positive outcomes there. Not to mention that we have history of outcomes, of programs, of services, of whatever it is, but we also have the original documentation of what the expectation from the city, from the Department of Law, right? So for instance, they should probably be here. Whoever drafted the original contract should probably be in the room for that discussion to understand what is the spirit of what the law of our own city is saying should be done, what they expected to be implemented according to what that contract says, because there's been a lot of back and forth regarding that over the years, even though to many of us, it's clear as day in English exactly what it says. But let's have the agency that's responsible for that language in the room. Let's have experts. And as I said, I have courted a couple of people. I'm going to follow through on that to see if we can have them in the room from the universities that are in our own district, right? Or at least on the perimeter of our district, to come and speak to what some of those best practices could be. I volunteer to, as I have in the past, to participate in doing outreach so that we can have a good showing of people from the community in the room and knowing what the importance of it is as well. But definitely the electeds. Yeah, I think that kind of covers where I was going with it.
Thanks, Aisha. I'm taking notes on that, and thank you for that clarification on the questions. So I have here, I think what would be helpful for us in kind of thinking about this public session, if you could share some of that research that has been pulled together in terms of how to best use these types of these spaces for community use. I wrote down here you recommended someone from the Department of Law, which I think is reasonable. To have someone there. You also talked about the different experts in terms of, kind of talking about best practices. So in terms of the actual format of the public session, what do you suggest, and open to others' thoughts as well, having, maybe it starting off with kind of these experts speaking about what those best practices are, and then going into a discussion with these different representatives, and then having kind of like a Q&A where the community can, be present and ask questions and kind of provide some suggestions. Is that kind of the format that you're thinking about? And would love to hear from others as well.
Yeah, when we have a public hearing, that's generally how
the format you're thinking. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily having an expert in the room, because sometimes we, depending on the topic, we consider ourselves that, or the elected officials is that, or whatever. But definitely including the Q&A, people that can speak to proper use, and yeah.
Okay, great. As I mentioned earlier, we obviously want to make sure that it's hybrid. In terms of timing, I mean, we obviously want to move this forward, in reasonable time. I think we initially talked about in December, I think we had talked about March or April. So that way that gives us time to, one, kind of let people settle in their roles, but also do the appropriate outreach, ensure that, those who need to be present have the date. There's kind of like no excuse. You've been told this date with time. This is when it's happening. What are your thoughts on that? And again, this question is not just for you, open to others as well.
My honest thoughts are, this resolution was passed in May and we're in January. And so my honest thoughts are, where is our leadership in their responsibility to make sure that resolutions, when they're passed, are followed through on? Why? And I know that we still have been discussing it in committee, but people above us who are in leadership also have had a responsibility to follow up with electeds, on the original resolution that is already passed. And then we're going to be almost a year later from the original passing of the resolution. I've seen public hearings happen in a couple of weeks, depending on how important we deem it. But
yeah, and just going back to something I said a couple months ago, my only thought on it was preferably in the spring, but most certainly before our summer break. So I kind of feel like that is a hard stop for us. We need to get it done by then. That's my thought.
Yeah, and just building on that, again, the purpose of this evening is to draft out what we as a committee are recommending, and then share that with the board leadership and say, okay, we've had this discussion, we've had input. This is what we're recommending. Let's move forward on, planning it and inviting, the respected representatives. I think I saw Richard's hand up, but so Richard, go ahead, and then Gary had his hand up as well. I'm not sure. So yeah, go ahead, Richard, and then I also see Phil, you have your hand up. So Richard, Gary, and then Phil.
Have I missed this draft list of questions? If I have, whether I have or haven't, I'd appreciate if between now and the next meeting, that list were either circulated or recirculated, and that will permit whatever input's appropriate.
You forgot the mention of the infamous 23 questions from a couple years ago. Yeah, it's been a little while since we touched on
Worth
them.
reading. Whether it's circulating or recirculating, it's worth getting it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll
we
do.
can definitely make that
As
happen,
well as the
for sure.
resolution as well. So that way everyone can have that, because we do have new committee members. We want to make sure that they're also on, kind of understand
And
the
I hear
information.
Aisha suggesting some other information that's relevant. Let's just get a decent package so that we can have a little fuller discussion than we seem on track to be having right now.
Thanks, Richard. Gary, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak. So I just want to clarify that Phil Zablocki came to me because he saw that I was getting in trouble for uncovering the truth and speaking up too much. So I'm here right now, and I believe that it's fair for this to be part of this discussion, because the resolution, I am curious, I submitted a conflict of interest. The resolution for growth and development service to be reinstated back into the Armory was lost by one vote. Okay, so that I have been dealing with
Gary,
this
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we're simply talking about when the forum should be held, if that's correct.
I'm asking the committee how they feel about what has gone on in this community board, with that you have a community members like myself.
That's not something that
Darryl,
we're
let me
talking
finish
about
my
at this
sentence,
meeting.
please. I'm talking about
But we're not
mental
talking
health
about it at
services.
this meeting.
No, why not? This is related to the Fort Washington Armory. Growth and Development Services was offering free mental health services, and they were evicted from the Armory, and our community needs mental health services. I'm here to speak about Growth and Development Services because the youth need mental health. And when you ask why,
And I don't think anyone disagrees with that, but
okay,
I
so
would
then I'm
thank
asking for why
if you
people
have
in
an
the
opinion
committee
on the
cannot
timing of the
speak
forum,
up about
that would be great to
the
hear.
way
Otherwise, we do need to move on.
Shah Ali is now on the Armory Foundation Board of Directors. I spoke to him about this. I spoke to George.
Gary,
I'm talking about mental health
I don't want to ask
services.
Chanel to mute
You don't have to
but I
silence
will
me
if you don't stop.
This is about the community board. Why don't people speak up? I'll stop. You can mute me. I'll mute myself.
Respectfully, it is 9:07, and so obviously there is quite a bit for us to discuss in regards to the format of the public session. So if we could try and keep our comments specific to that. Gary, I would echo what Darryl said. Obviously mental health services are incredibly important. And I've seen, kind of some of the work that you guys have been doing with, when you come to the community board meeting. So thank you so much for that continued work. It's incredibly important. Phil, I think I saw your hand up. Again, because it is quite late already in the evening, if you could please keep your comments to your thoughts on the public session format in terms of timing, representatives for us to invite, questions that we should be asking, outreach, so on and so forth. I think you've been promoted to be able to speak.
Yeah, I think you should be able to hear me.
Okay, great. Yes, we could hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everybody. No, I just would like to see the time frame moved up to February, no later than March, because as Aisha has mentioned, there's been public sessions that have taken place a lot sooner. Beyond that, I don't want to derail the conversation regarding the public session and everything. I just, after this conversation, if we can just get an update on the other items that are part of the be it resolved in the resolution, because as you know, I haven't been able to get an answer from your chairperson. So besides there being the public session that we're talking about tonight, what is the status of the other be it resolves that are part of the resolution? And I'll yield my time back. Thank you.
And Phil, if I could just say real quick, I know you sent me a very thoughtful email a while back, and I'm not sure who all you shared it with, but if you didn't share it with the whole committee, if I could do that, that would be great, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Great.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, in regards to the timing, I mean, again, as Daryl mentioned, we obviously want to have this before the summer break. It's been going on for quite some time. And so I had recommended March, April. I think February might be too soon. So maybe let's aim for March then. Again, kind of the next steps for us regarding this particular discussion this evening is to put this in, somewhat of a proposal and say, okay, this is what we discussed. This is what we're proposing. These are the individuals we want to invite, so on and so forth. Regarding the other be it resolved, that's something that we as a committee can certainly get back to you on. We'll take a look and we can definitely discuss that as well and provide an update for you and the community in regards to where those things stand. Just wanted to check if there's anyone else that has any thoughts on the format, because again, it is 9:10 in the evening. Okay, I don't see any hands. What I would recommend is, I believe, Aisha, you agreed to kindly recirculate the questions. When you do that, if you're able to also recirculate the resolution, what I would recommend for committee members is, again, kind of take a close look at that. If there are any kind of other thoughts that you have, to please share, and that we can compile that to put forward to the executive board or the community board leadership. In terms of our proposal for the public session.
Will do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I don't see other hands up. Any other old business? Okay, I don't see anything. New business? Gary, go ahead. Just 2 minutes, please. Go ahead.
Of course. Thank you for letting me speak. GDS is looking for new community space to continue our mental health services. So I have tried to speak at Youth and Ed, but they don't let me. I have tried to share events with the community, but Community Board 12 refuses to share our free mental health events and all of this is documented. So I've also asked to be in the resource directory. So how is this related to new business? I also went to health and environment, and I asked Steve Simon if I could put out a feeler to the community, because again, I have developed new partnerships in Harlem. We work with Madison Square Boys and Girls Club this summer. But I feel I've founded GDS, and I went to Washington Heights because of the need for mental health services in our youth and the community. I'm very dedicated to this community. So what I'm asking for is if anyone on the committee could help to reach out to the 5 public officials that have promised to help us find new community space for our mental health services, or if you would be kind enough to please advocate for growth and development service. Forget about me. This is not about me, because it's about the need for mental health services. So the new business I'm asking for is that if anyone could please help us be introduced to another organization that could benefit from mental health services, or can help us find a new home in the Heights so we can have a new community space. We're continuing our programs virtually. We offer support now with COVID, they're needed more than ever. So we have a program called Leaders for Change, and we have other community programs. We're continuing our Youth Engaging Seniors program with the elders that we used to do at Riverstone. So we're continuing our services. We had to leave the Harold O. Levy School because of COVID, and now it's hard to go back in there because they're not letting new program partners in. So my new business is asking if anyone knows anyone or could help us, please make sure that we continue these needed leadership development, youth development, and mental health services and intergenerational programs. I appreciate it. It's been 25 years, and as you could see, we're not going anywhere. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. We'll for sure take that with us and get back to you if we're able to support in any way.
Appreciate that.
For sure. I don't see any other hands for new business. I guess I just really quickly wanted to raise an article that maybe some of you may have seen in the patch regarding the Washington Heights injection site. And I don't recall the exact number, but I'll circulate it. We don't have to spend time discussing it, but it's just kind of, sharing information about the number of overdoses that they've been able to reverse since they've been opened, which I think is incredible news and just really showing how important those services are for our community. For those of you who haven't seen it, again, I'll just kind of share it and everyone can take a look at that. I thought that was really good. And thanks, Bruce, for raising that. Anything else on new business?
Well, in that same vein, I want to reiterate, I said it previously at a meeting, but previously on the Housing and Human Services Committee, articles, current events happening in our city in general, or sometimes things that are relevant to work that we're doing, but maybe happening somewhere else in the country, were shared so that the committee can be kept abreast of best practices, dynamics, things coming down the pipeline. I feel like that was a good practice. So, and I know, the Zoom makes it difficult because it's different when you walk in and you just have, a stack of articles when you're meeting versus it going out in email. But I think that it's still a good practice. So.
For sure, would agree with you. And I guess, kind of a point for all of us, if there are kind of any articles that you come across or things that, you're aware of happening in our community, do share with the rest of the committee so that we're all, familiar with what's going on, and in particular as it affects the work that we do here. So thanks for that point, Aisha. Richard, I see your hand, and then after you, we'll go ahead and close out the meeting.
Sounds good. Just responding to two things that were just said. The number of overdoses that have been reversed at the Washington Heights site is 47, according to the patch article. And just a thought, I love clipping, receiving stuff, sharing stuff like that. We probably need to be careful that we do it within context of open meetings, which means that it needs to clearly be informational. And we just need to be careful in how we put it forward.
For sure. Point well taken. Thanks so much, Richard. Great. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out the meeting. It's 9:17. Can I get a motion to end the meeting, to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
The little one got some extra time to stay up, huh?
Yes. Now it's bedtime.
Thank you again to everybody. Etta, feel better.
Thank you.
Yes,
Happy New Year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.